How many words do you need to learn a new language? Do you really need so many? And how do we go about learning them? Let's talk about that. What's up guys, I'm Cole. Let's tackle this topic. If you had to guess, how many words would you say that you know in your native language? If you're like most people, then you would say, I have absolutely no idea. Well, you're absolutely not alone, and this question is especially applicable to those who want to learn a second language. Because in a lot of other things outside of language learning, it's really easy to sort of quantify your goals. Like, oh, I want to get a 4.0 average in school, or I want to learn X, Y, and Z. But in language learning, it's really hard to break something like that down. But according to Stuart Webb, an applied linguistics professor at the University of Ontario, a typical native speaker knows anywhere between 15,000 to 20,000 word families, otherwise known as lemmas. And a lemma is simply a base word along with all of its variations. Like for example, blue, bluer, bluest, and bluish would be an example of a lemma. And even though they are technically 4 separate words, this would be one lemma. So if we were to multiply this number 4 by the aforementioned number 20,000, we would get around 80,000 words. Which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. Here's why. Because when you learn a new language, it's very, very important that you have a certain attention to detail and you learn to recognize patterns more easily. So if you were to learn the word blue, you could know every single other word in the lemma if you had previously learned just the patterns themselves. And this greatly enhances your ability to communicate in any language. That's why if you were to ask me, it's much better to measure how many words should I learn in word families or lemmas rather than the words themselves. And if you didn't like the numbers before, you're gonna love this one. If you learn just 800 of these so-called lemmas, you'll be able to understand about 75% of the entire language as it's spoken in everyday life. And that's just for learning the base words themselves, plus a few teensy-weensy little patterns. But you may be wondering, how many lemmas do I need to know to get to a C1, C2, a really advanced level? Well, it's generally considered that if you want to be able to understand complicated dialogues and things like TV shows and movies, then you'll need around 3,000 lemmas. Or if you want to read entire novels, which is really getting up there in terms of difficulty, then you'll need anywhere between 8,000 and 9,000. But just remember, this is all dependent on your goals. Because we all learn foreign languages for different reasons, but I'm sure we can all agree on the fact that most of us are going to want to be able to communicate in that language one day. And I'm telling you right now that you really don't need that much vocabulary to do so. Because it's estimated that just 3,000 words in English, words, not lemmas, make up between 90 and 95% of everyday conversations in English. What? How is this possible? Well, simply put, different languages have different amount of words. The Romance languages, for example, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and so on, have a lot of different verb conjugations. So if you count all of those individually, you're going to have a really high amount of words. And if you compare that to the relatively few or fewer word conjugations that we have in English, then it's very reasonable to say that the average native speaker of Portuguese knows more words than the average native speaker of English. And not to mention speakers of Slavic languages, oh my god. But this is all, of course, just an estimate. What we really want to achieve when we go out to study a language is 100% up to us. And if you don't know a word, you can always use circumlocution as a way of communicating and getting your point across even if you don't know or forgot the word. Also, when do you know a word anyway? Do you know a word when you can just recognize it and infer its meaning? Or do you know a word when you can consistently recall it from memory in any given conversation? The answer to that is up to you. But really, if you were to take one thing from this video, consider this. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Stop thinking about the amount of words that you should be knowing and think about enjoying the process itself. Because memorizing words is not how we learn words. We instead learn them through repeated exposure to the words themselves, preferably in contexts that we really enjoy. So as long as you put in the time, be consistent with it, and just do a little bit every day or every other day, you will absolutely get to where you want to be. No, really, I'm serious. Just trust the process, enjoy it, ask a ton of questions, and with time, you will absolutely get there. But if you still want a quantified, specific answer for how many words you need at each level of the CEFR scale, here's a chart just for you. I'll keep it on the screen for a couple of seconds while I just stay here, waiting. I really hope this helped you out, guys, and provided some good insight into languages and how we should go about learning them. You can always check out 2 more of my videos here if you like. That would be pretty cool of you. Just saying. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and peace.